This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Dalid, and we're holding on Gimel Amid Beis, Baruch Hashem. Almost, we feel like we're deep into a new Masechta already, even though it's only our third day. Siyata D'Shemaya, let's allow that vigor and excitement to continue, like all the learning for this month, the month of Teves, to be an incredible Schos Aliyas Neshama, for Yaleb and Ya'akov, Siyata D'Shemaya, that Torah with an excitement, that Talmud Torah Derabim should continue elevating the Heilige Neshama of Aryeh ben Ya'akov higher and higher in Gan Eden Shamayla. Yeah, that had this chos of learning in Niradin should be a Milat Yesher for all of us. So we're holding in the bottom of Gimel Amid Beis, and we're in the middle of Shitas Reb Shimon. Shitas Reb Shimon, who, to sum it up very quickly and maybe too succinctly, is that myself, that we allow, even though you're doing a Minchas Marcheshes, and you have in mind for Minchas Machavas, and again, there are different types of Minchas, there are different forms of cooking, one in a flat pan, one in a thicker pan. A flat pan is going to create more of a brittle matzah, firm type of mincha. The one in the thicker pan is going to be a softer, fluffier type of dough. So the maisa, the action that you're doing is meichiach, proves to me what you're doing, and therefore, even though your kavana might have been wrong, but it's still going to work. And we had a stira of Shimon, and we had three different terutzim to the stira. We had a Rabbah, we had a Rava, and we had a Rav Ashi. And now he lines in the bottom, the Gemara now in classical Gemaric sense, the Gemara goes, and the Gemara contrasts, and wants to understand, why didn't Rabbah hold like Rava? Why didn't Rava hold like Rabbah? Why didn't Rava hold like Rav Ashi? Why didn't Rav Ashi hold like Rabbah? Why didn't Rav Ashi hold like Rava? Why didn't Rava hold like Rav Ashi? I think those are all your permutations. So says the Gemara, Kuluk Rabba Amri, they don't all hold of Rabbah. Rabbah said the difference was between Shinui Kaidesh and Shinui Bailim. The way to answer the stira was it a difference of a difference in a carbon thought mindset or a difference in owner? Why? Because Adirabba, Machshava de Minkara, Pasor Achmana. The reason all like Rabbah is because they are of the opinion that Misvara, it makes more sense to say a Machshava, which is more Minkar, which is more discernible, is going to be more puzzle. Excuse me. And the reason being, says Rashi, excuse me. Where's Rashi? I don't know, let's just speak of Rashi outside. Excuse me. The problem being that we don't want someone to say that you're able to change from carbon A to carbon B, which of course is incorrect. Kirava Amri, Rabba and Rav Ashi don't hold like Rava, who said the chalik is, were you having kavana for another mincha? Or were you having kavana for a zevach, for a carbon? V'zayis teiras, loy mashmelahu, they argue on the drasha. And finally, Rav Ashi lay amri, shem kushya, deravacha brei derava, as we saw yesterday. So says the Gemara, Melsa de pshita le rabba lahagisa, ule rabba lahagisa, mi ba'ile le Rav Ishia. That which Rabba and Rava each took for a davar pashit, says the Gemara, something that Rav Ishia asked as a shayla, which is what? The Ba'i Rav Ishia, Amrila, Ba'i Minei Rav Ishia. May Rav Asi, some say it was Rav Ishia that asked of Rav Asi. Mincha l'shum zevach. If a mincha is done l'shum zevach with the mindset that it should be an animal carbon, Mali Amar Reb Shimon. And the shayla was, what is going to be Shitas Reb Shimon? And now we articulate what is Rav Hoshia's shayla. Again, Dafka within Shitas Reb Shimon, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who said a minchas machvas that you bring is a minchas marcheshes is going to be kosher, is the reason on the first line of Daled Amud Aleph. Taima de Rav Shimon mishamachshava de minkara. Loi pasla, v'machshav de minkra. Anytime it's recognizable, it's not going to be puzzle. Why? Because your maisim are going to prove that you're not doing it. And therefore, when I'm bringing a mincha, and I have in mind that it should be for a zevach, for a karban, perhaps it should be the same, that this is recognizable, that it's clearly not that. Clearly, I'm holding flour. I'm not holding an animal. So the fact that the Kohen said that this is l'shem zevach is clearly ridiculous. And therefore, myself, and his actions will prove us that that's not what it is. Oidelma on the third line, or maybe time there of Shimon. Says in the Torah, and this is the halach of the mincha, which shows us there's one halach for all different minchas. V'zevach loiksiv, and it doesn't say this halach of the mincha and the zevach, and therefore, if the kohen would bring the mincha as a zevach, as an animal karban, it would be possible. That was the shayla of Rav Oishia. And Amar Le, Rav Asi says to Rav Oishia, again, that's if you're going with the second lashon that we saw in the bottom of the Amid, or Rav Oishia himself says in response, Klom Aginu, L'Seif Daita Shel Rav Shimon, have we come to the end of the understanding of Rav Shimon to answer the shayla? Meaning, we know that Rav Shimon himself was Seiser himself, and we had three terutzim like we just explained. We had a Rabbah, we had a Rava, and we had a Rav Ashi. But Rav Hoshia or Rav Asi, whoever's answering the Shaila, is coming along and saying that even within the terutzim, Shitas Rav Shimon is not fully clear. So the Gemara says, why? What did Rav Asi or Rav Hoshia have with the three terutzim? So explains the Gemara, Kerabalo Mishani Lewai, Mishum Kosha Debaye. He was bothered by Rabba's teretz because Vabai is Kashi Kravalo Mishani Le Mishum. Koshev Zoteres Chatos, it's not mashma. Kravash Le Mishani Le Mishum Kosha Deravacha Brei Derava. So the Gemara is concluding that Rav Hoshia and or Rav Asi didn't go as far as these three terutzim went. Didn't accept that this is clearly the sheet of Rav Shimon, and because of that, they were left with a shayla. What's going to happen in this scenario of a mincha l'shem zevach? And the Gemara continues the 2 dots, 10 lines down, quoting the next part of the Mishnah, which is what? Minchas chayte u'minchas kina'is. And again, we did not answer up for Rav Shimon what the status would be. But now says the Gemara, the next part of the Mishnah, except for a minchas chayte and minchas kina'is, which are pasal if they are brought shaloi lishma, if they are brought not for their sake. And again, this is piggybacking off the first part of the Mishnah, which said shaloi lishma is kosher. Chutz from these two minchais, which are completely pasal entirely. So says the Gemara of Arvas, what is the reason? What's special about these two minchais? So Be'eshlam minchas chaytei chatos kari rechmana. The Torah calls it a chatos, as the pasuk says, lo yasmu laHashem lo yitin levaina ki chatosi. And therefore, just like a chatos, ayin, go back to the Zvachim Daf Beis, just like a zevach of a chatos l'shma is completely pasal, so to a mincha. But elon minchas kanais min alon. Where do we know that a minchas kanais is going to be pasal if it is shaloi lishma? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Minchas kanais muteres nidava maisara nidava. Excuse me. A minchas kanais, the excess of it is a nidava. And Amar Le Rav Nachman said to the one who taught this, Raisa Shaber Kamrit, what you're saying is good. Maskeres avon ksivba, that by the minchas kanais, what does it say? A reminder, a maskeres of avon of the avera. Ubechatos, and by the chatos, what does it say? Ksiv. V'oisei nasan lachem. Losses is avon oida. And if you gave it to you to gain forgiveness for the avon, for the avera of the ida. So the same word Maskeres avoin. The same word Allah says is avoin is in both psukim, which teaches us what? Machatos, just like by chatos, maisar nidava, the excess of a chatos is a nidava, says the Gemara of Minchas Kinois. Maisar nidava, the excess is going to be a nidava. And once we make this linkage, ukichatos, machatos, psula, shaloi lishma, Minchas Kinois, psula, shaloi lishma. So the Gemara is proving to us that the Minchas Kinois is linked via Gzer Shavat Achatas, and that's why it's possible Shaloi Lishma. But frek the Gemara Elamiyata, Asham Yeh Basel Shaloi Lishma, and Asham should be the same thing. You know why? To come Avon Avon Mechatas, because it says Avon by Asham as well. Says the Gemara, no. To have an Avon, me Avon, being done an Avon, Avonai. It's not the exact same word. Says the Gemara, why should this minor difference, why should that make a difference? But stated in Yeshivas Rabbi Yishmael, famously, which this is where it shows us that even though it's a different word, Zui Shiva, Zui Bia, they mean the same thing, returning and coming. So from here we see, according to Rabbi Yishmael, you're able to make a Gzira Shava, even if it's not the same word. So certainly, if it's avoinoi and avoin, you certainly can. And the Gemara says, and even not according to Rabbi Yishmael. V'oid, and furthermore, ligmar avoinoi, avoinoi, me avoin deshmias kol. We have a proof that avoinoi is the same thing as an avoin. Tersev, im lo yagiv v'nasa avoinoi. So says the Gemara, why do we not have the same Gzer Shava by an Asham? Answers Gemara, Ki Gamri Gzer Shava Lemeiser Nidavu de Gamri. The Gzer Shava only teaches us that the excess is a nidava, but it does not teach us the halacha that'll be possible shalei lishma. If you're going to tell me in Gzer Shava lemechsi, so what does this mean? That means we're splitting it in half. That in as much as we have a Gzer Shava of an avain, a Minchas Kanois to achatos, we're only allowing it to teach us about the moisers and a dava, but we're not allowing it to teach us that it's like a chatas, that it's possible shalishma. It says the Gemara, how can you split Gzer Shava in half? Kali rachman gabe chatas, v'shachanei salachatas, oisa lishma kshira, shalei lishma psula, aval kol kachim, bein lishma, bein shalei lishma kshirim. Says the Gemara, you could split the Gzer Shava in half, and the reason is because of the Gili Akra, which shows us that this din of the Zevach, of the carbon, of the Chata, Shalei Lishma being Basel, is a din Dafka by Chatas and not by other carbonis. But says the Gemara, so based on what we just said, we're left with a kasha. Now that we're saying that we're now learning it out from a chatos. So how do we know that minchas chatos is minchas kanoi? So explains the Gemara 10 lines to the bottom. Chatos taimamai. What's the reason why a chatos shalei lishma is completely possible? It says chatos he achanam yaksiv beho he. Meaning even though we don't have the linkage of avain, says the Gemara, the word he suffices. Says the Gemara, the obvious follow up, Ashanami Aksiv Behi. By an Asham, it says the same thing. So, in as much as a Chatas is going to be Basel Shalishma. And now we're learning that a Minchas Chayte is also going to be Basel Shalishma. So, why isn't an Asham the same? Explains the Gemara, who, that word who by an Asham, is the achar aktaras emurim, is after the emurim are burnt up with the chsev. Keditanya, as we learned in our brayso, aval asham noinamar bayhu, elol achar aktaras emurim. Only after the aktaras emurim, hu atzmai shalai yokturu emurav kosher. Says the Gemara, so if this is true of Elahu Lamali, why did the Torah have to use this limiting word at all. Says more, you know why? For a different day in the Ravuna Marav, Asham Shanitik L'Riya, V'Shachat Stam, it's going to be kosher, L'Sham, Aylah, that you have an Asham that's grazing until it gets a mum, and he's shechter without any kavana, you're allowed to bring it as an Aylah. Sounds like Nitak in, only if it's kozine to be grazing, only if it has to be sitting there. Then it can be utilized as an Aylah, but if not, it cannot be a Nekasher Aylah. Why is this din true? Amar Krahu, it has to stay as its status, and that's why by an Asham, it's going to be different than a Chatos. We continue, 3 lines on the bottom of Dalet Amud Aleph, continuing the discussion of Shalei Lishma by a Mincha. What were the opening words of the Mesechta, similar to Zvachim? All Mincha Shalei Lishma are kosher. As we just started discussing the chutz, the Minchas Chayte, the Minchas Kanais, which are completely possible. So says the Gemara, really, is it only these 2 types of minchas that are completely possible? Amara minchas oimer she'ekasu shalish b'absula. Similarly, the mincha of the oimer on Shavuos, if you did the kmitza shalei lishma, it's going to be completely possible. Hayel sin to basal hater v'lo. Says the Gemara, you know why? Because why do you bring the carbon oimer? The carbon aimer is brought to be matir. It's brought to allow you to eat the new grain. And that's the entire purpose. And it was brought shalai lishma, so it didn't do what it had to do. And therefore it's going to be completely possible. Not that it's kosher, it's completely possible. Similarly, by an Asham Nazir, and as we turn off the Dalan Beis, always Asham Nazir goes together with Asham Mesaira. That what? Shashachtan Shalishmam Psulin. Why? So if the whole impetus of these carbonais is la'achshir, by the carbon aimer is the new crop, the new wheat, over here by the Asham Mesaira, it's going to be to have wine, etc. So if it doesn't do that, why? Because it's Shalei Lishma, therefore it's going to be completely impossible. But frakti Gemara, 1 second. Tinam we learned Tinam Yeshna Kol Amincha Shenik Shalishman Gesheirais El Shalabayim Shem Chayva Chazu Minchas Chayte Minchas Kenais our Mishnah. So what's the obvious kasha? V'misa according to Rav Listinami Chazu Minchas Aimer. According to Rav, if there's a third one that should be on the list, it's pretty shver that the Mishnah lists 2 out of 3. Says the Gemara, Kiketani, Ba'a Yachid, Ba'a Tzibur, like a Tani Minchas is a carbon tzibur. That's why it was not listed. Kitani, Ba'a Beglal Atzmai, Ba'a Beglal Zevach, like a Tani, Kiketani Hanach, She'in Kavu Alem Zaman. Like a Mishnah, the Gemara proves to us that Avada, there are other minchas as well that are going to be completely possible. However, they're not listed in the Mishnah as they don't fit within the context of the Mishnah. 10 lines down, Dalam Beis the 2 dots, Amar Amar, quoting the statement of Rav. They're going to be psulim. Why? Therefore, it's going to be puzzle. Frakti Gemara, Tinan, going back to the Gemara Zvachim Daf Beis. Kol Zvachim Sheshachta Shalei Lishman Ksherin Ela Shalom Elam the Shom Chayv Chosmi Bazav Chatos Vim Isa. Based on what we just said, listen, I'm Chosmi Hashem Nazir Hashem Mitzayra. Why are those not listed in the Mishnah in Zvachim? Says the Gemara, there are other karbanos asham that what that what are they coming for a kapara? And therefore, if they're brought shalei lishma, they're going to be kosher. Therefore, it's not absolute. Mishnah is talking 100% precision. Therefore, it's not an all-encompassing absolute statement that an asham shalei lishma is possible. Why? Because an asham gzilis and asham me'ilah shalei lishma are going to be kosher. Why are those different from the Asham Nazir, from the Asham Me'ila and the Asham Gzeila? The reason is Bar L'Hachshav L'Chshiru. What's the difference? If it's coming to Machshir, it's coming to Kabara. It's not attaining its status, so it should be completely possible. Amar Rav Yirmiyah, Matzinu Shechalak HaKaza B'Mechabrin Ubein Machshirin. Says Rav Yirmiyah, we find that the Torah separates between something giving you a kapara and something that's just being machshir. Mechabr, it's like giving you a kapara is boo. Dasi achar misa. Something giving you a kapara is you brought even after the person dies. Machshirin, but it's something to allow something to be kosher. Less boo. Dasi lachar misa. Now the Gemara proves this chilek, the Tanan. Ha'isha shaviyu chatas u'meisa aviyu yarshin. The yarshin bring it oilasa, as in oila. Oilasa, if she's bringing oila, meisa lo yaviyu yarshin chatasa. Correct, Gemara, is this true? Maskif law. Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon, Bazi, Machshirin, Nami, Mi, Lasbu. But even Machshirin, even a carbon that's coming to qualify. What's the kasha? Mi, Lasbu, Dasi, Lachar, Misa. Is that accurate? You telling me that none of them are bro Lachar, Misa, like you just suggested? Vatanan. But it's not true. Because we learned in a Mishnah and Me'ila, Ha'amavish Maz, the Nazirasai, Loi Nehenin, why? Because the Roi to come, Kulan Shlamim, Mace. But if the person dies, they go for a Nedava. I just lost my place, excuse me. Mifurashin, if they were specified for a certain carbon, the first white line, Dami Demichatas Yelech Yam HaMelech. Lo inanim v'lo moilin. Demei oila is yavi ben oila or moilin ben. Demei shlamim is yavi ben shlamim and achali yom echad. Vein tu nolacha. So what do we see from this brisa? Articulates the Gemara that oila and shlamim, the nazir machshirim, they know v'kasel achar misa. They're coming to be machshir, and yet what are we saying? We're saying the yes bro achar misa, not like we just explained. So we conclude, Amar Baba Achika Amar Rav Yirmiyah, Lo Matzinu Hechsher Kavua Debal Achar Misa. We don't find a fixed carbon that comes Achar Misa. With the Nazir Hechsher She'enei Kavua, who a Nazir is not a fixed carbon. How do we know? As we turn over to tomorrow's Daf Daf Hey, Tamar Mar Gilach Alechem Mishleishtan Yatza. If they shaved his head after bringing a carbon, even before he brought all three, if he only brought one out of three, he's still Yatza. And that's going to be similarly the din by us. We'll pick it up from here at Daf Hey Amid Aleph for the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.